There we go. So yes, I'm Jeff, React Denver, bathrooms over there, stuff like that. Sorry. Anywho, yes, I work for a company called Plainsight, as the shirt says. I do computer vision. Every time you see the self-driving cars with fun little graphics on them to show you it's highlighting a person, that's what my company does, more or less. I am a front-end engineer for them. I do all the labeling pieces, dashboards, lots and lots and lots of data points, which makes so much fun dealing with race. I've been with this company for 3 years. Prior to that, I did legal e-docs, so legal discovery, very boring, tedious task of reading Word documents from CEOs that wanted to keep things private. Very boring to a point. I started actually learning React because of the Denver React meetup. I had been watching Twitter. Twitter is actually a fantastic place to be a fly on the wall and find out what people are talking about, because it's really hard to learn new technologies if no one's telling you about them. So go join Twitter if you're not in the dumpster fire that is Twitter. So I was sitting a couple of years, several years ago. People start talking about React. I'm like, what is this thing? We all knew about Angular. This was like Angular just about 2 is when I figured it out, and I didn't want to do Angular. Bidirectional data binding was not my cup of tea. So I checked out React, and it so happened to be that a couple folks at a company called Granicus, who first hosted the React Denver, started it up, and there were 6 of us who started in just a small conference room talking about Redux versus Nuclear.js. Nuclear.js is another state machine that you haven't heard of because no one uses it anymore. It was great. Nuclear.js actually reminded me a lot of Recoil. Recoil is yet another state management library brought to you by Facebook. So Nuclear.js and Redux at the time were multiple state objects versus single state, which is Redux. Redux is the single source of truth. Nuclear.js was you had state slices and you updated the part you wanted, not a whole global. When I say we, I just reference like engineers in general, not me and a couple of people in the back. We saw the Flux architecture of Redux and said, this is actually awesome. It's immutable. It's easy to trace, like data goes one direction and you can track it and log it and do all sorts of really fun things. Nuclear.js was not immutable, but you could make it immutable by using immutable.js, which if you've ever played with that, that is also a dumpster fire. It's fine. It's just very complex. Use Immer. Immer's better. So I used Redux for a period of time. I used Nuclear.js for a period of time. And now I use Recoil, which is much more like Nuclear.js than Redux. But it's because it has multiple state slices, which are so you can literally just update the thing you care about versus the whole state tree. Because if you follow blog posts and tutorials, everyone puts their API results in Redux. And so now you are shipping entire API sets around in giant circle loops around your entire infrastructure. That's not the best way to do it. So please ask questions, like interrupt me, because I'm just going to stand up here and talk at you for the next, I'm going to go for 20 minutes because I really can't talk that long. Yes.
Yeah, we've talked a couple times through like Discord actually, and I appreciate that. And the last conversation we had was about like the asynchronous bits about, or how React, I guess, is written beneath the stack or beneath the language, and how it renders and how it passes state through different objects. I believe the last conversation that we had was I was passing a state function into another, like a downstream component. And then I was doing some other stuff, and the downstream component kept the old version of the state. And then when I went back to get data from that component, it was returning stale data to me.
That's the fun part. So yeah, that.
But it was a state variable. Yeah.
Yes. So that's it could. It's all about like the render tree, passing functions down as props, without really seeing a whole slice of the code and figuring out the context. States, like when you send down a state setter, you still want, you lift up state to the highest ancestor component, and your state setters come down and are going to come like just around robin back up. I remember.
My question was a bit more fundamental.
Yeah.
Because why is, when you pass such a state down, why does React not pass a pointer to it? I'm from C.
So, pointers and references. This one fails me a little bit because
So many articles.
Pointing by reference and whatnot is not something that's common in JavaScript, and not something I usually do. References and whatnot are usually much more object-oriented programming languages, PHP, Go, or not Go,
C#.
C#. You keep a lot of things by reference and pass reference rather than passing a literal, which in React, we do everything with off the literal. It's a declarative language, so passing references around doesn't work all that wonderfully. I would be interested to see more of your code and try and help you out a little more.
I mean, of course I figured it out, but it's more like why exactly is this passing by reference? I read a bunch of articles about it, and it's like, yeah, it's very esoteric. But I guess, yeah, maybe the store or the state is somehow like moved around inside the stack, which is why you can't point to this.
Yeah, it could also be so. With hooks, the way hooks work on the React namespace could be a little wonky, depending on the render tree at the time. You might have been losing the reference during the render phase. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have perfect answers for you right now, but pointers by reference aren't going to be the best. A couple questions from online. Randall says, as a senior React dev, curious what stack you're using, React, Node, Mongo, what's good? I think that's a better question of what's bad. This is a React meetup, so I'm going to say React is good. I mean, that being said, Svelte is pretty awesome if you haven't checked out Svelte. There's also a new one that has been creeping up around on Twitter. It's called Solid.js. I don't know if Solid.js is a framework or if it's a library such as React or Svelte. I have to actually do research on that one because I haven't looked at it yet. I've been kind of trapped in my little ecosphere for a while. Node, of course, Node. I'm using Next.js for one of our products, and I'm using a former Create React app, now Vite app for our primary application. So that's much more home frameworky. Haven't used Mongo in a while. And by in a while, I'm going to say probably 8-9 years. Databases, I generally work with relational databases. Document stores such as Mongo, Firebase, Elasticsearch are fantastic tools. Not great for relational data references. I wouldn't use Mongo to store a user table, for instance. Document stores are, it's a slightly different use case. I got my bachelor's in relational database systems, Oracle. If anyone has ever played with an Oracle database, it is an engineer's dream and a UX engineer's nightmare. The interfaces designed for engineers only. I hated their interfaces, and I'm an engineer. So I know relational databases are also so good at certain tasks where Elasticsearch, like doing Elasticsearch on aggregate data, or I don't want to say malformed, but unstructured data, where you don't have a really tight schema that you would use in a relational database. So databases I use are going to be Postgres for the absolute majority of what I do. The rest of my stuff it is all kind of data lakey we use Google platform. So we use Data Lake and BigQuery and stuff. I'm going to say stuff because that's actually not my purview with my company. I'm a front-end developer, which I love. Sure, I got my bachelor's in database engineering, but I don't actually enjoy writing SQL statements. I can write a SQL statement. Once upon a time, I worked for the University of Colorado, just a couple blocks down here in Denver, and I was working with a procedural SQL that the statement printed out could be 23 pages. I mean, it was joins and inner joins, outer joins, left, right, just mind-boggling amount of data. And I couldn't tell you for multiple reasons what it did. But yes, finding a typo in 23 pages of a SQL syntax is not my idea of fun. So going back, what's good about stacks? Really, it's kind of what suits you best. Reading docs. Like I said, Mongo is great. If that's what you deem you need, fantastic, go for it. I think you're probably referencing the MERN stack. Mongo, Express, React, and Node. I haven't actually used MERN. I used to use whatever the PHP MySQL stack was, whatever that one was called back in the day. So I can't be of terrible use for that one. LAMP, yes, thank you, Martin. The LAMP stack. That was also when I was doing WordPress dev. I don't do WordPress dev either anymore. fantastic tool. Okay, this cart seriously needs brakes. I think I found the brake. Haha. Okay. Another question, Chelsea. Sorry if you already said this. What does my company start using React? So the company I work for now actually formed, I would say about 5 years ago. And the first official product was built starting using React. It's actually when I started 3 years ago, it was like I created the repo for what is now our main product, and it was Create React App, which suited us well for about 2.5 years. So don't underestimate Create React App. Sorry, I thought I heard something. The previous company, I started working with React. I did it on a greenfield project, which never amounted to anything. I did investigate what effort it would take to rewrite the entire application into React. And it's not a number engineers like to think about. Very fun prospect to rewrite an entire application, because you get to make all of the fundamental decisions again and go, what did we do wrong the first time? How can we do it better the second time? But we were taking potentially a product that has been out for 13 years, a very custom framework, like not built on it was all in-house stuff. And I estimated between 4 engineers, if we stopped feature development whatsoever, it would be like 16 months. Like if we just started and it was, I got shot down very expectedly. I have also since moved from that company. Now my decisions, we're not changing from React, though I do prospect to my director of engineering that we're going to start using Svelte. And I tell them that like once every 6 months, like, oh yeah, by the way, we're changing the framework just to see what kind of rise I get out of them. I don't get a rise anymore because I've done it too many times. But now it's more frameworky, Next.js versus Nuxt. I don't know what the difference is. Nuxt is too close to Next. So Google thinks you misspelled it sometimes. Did you mean Next? Sure. Next.js is pretty awesome. I would also take a look at Remix. We had Ken Dodds 6 months ago do a meetup for us and showed us all about Remix. That is on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch that one. Remix is awesome. React Denver's website is built in Remix. And Daniel is one of many who helped us out building the new website. Still got a lot to do, but you all signed up through it, which means it worked. It took a little longer than I expected it to, but team of engineers that are all freelance and free and have limited time, and learning like the Tito API, which is not a fantastic API. It works, but the documentation could sorely use like a lot of work. But hey, congratulations, y'all signed up and you're here. Housekeeping on that is this Zoom link is the permanent Zoom link. So just like copy it until I have to dump it for a new one if it gets out. Yes, Remix run. So yeah, this Zoom link should be our permanent one. That was a little bit of a headache for a few months there. Next is basically next for view. Thank you, Martin. So that's why I haven't used Next, because I don't write in Vue. That being said, really, there's not a huge difference between Vue, Svelte, and React. Similar APIs. At the end of the day, you are rendering HTML to the screen, and it's a state machine. So it's just pick your poison for APIs. People really want to go nitty gritty and do JS performance and which one is faster. And I'm like, I have out in production live app that compiled and built is the bundle is like 31 megabytes. I'm like it's huge. It's got Apollo for GraphQL and all this stuff, and it still is fast. Could I, in theory, make it faster by switching the library? Sure. Ooh, it just got darker in here. Can I make it faster? Yes. Is that going to happen? No. Performance is something that is something we all pay attention to some degree or another, but it should not be your first and foremost consideration. Like, does it work? Like, your user is paying for a button that when you press it, it does something. If I spend all of my time trying to make that thing as fast or as clean as possible, never going to ship. I like to tell my students that the code that gets you paid is the code that ships. And I don't really care if you're dealing with big O notation and doing loops inside of loops, which is bad, but I'm going to keep waving my hands because you have to, what is your data? What are you working with? If performance is an issue, it is something you tackle, you work on, but make sure that that's the issue first. I've seen people go, yes, I'm dealing with 5 million records. I'm going, you need to page that stuff. Like, don't deal with 5 million records. That's no. Chop it up. Like, use a data, like pipe it into a database and use data functions that are built for that. Don't use JavaScript. Chelsea, as a junior dev, I appreciate that it's like, yes. There's a lot of insights I can give you, and that's kind of, I guess, why I'm here. It's brain is floating away. So I apologize. I am just kind of all over the place. So like I said, performance, definitely something you should worry about. There's a great post of Wikipedia. The engineers at Wikipedia printed off their flame graph, their performance time to first byte on a huge sheet of paper and analyze, like with Sharpies, analyzing every single point of that thing, like what's happening here. When you're working on the scale of Wikipedia, sure, that can be of interest. I don't operate on scale like that. And frankly, not sure I want to. 80-20 rule of performance optimization, the Petrel principle, 80% performance drives 20% of the code. A nested loop that operates rarely or only a few records hardly matters. Yes, Martin. That's what I was getting at with what's your data set. If you have 5 million records, probably n squared loop, probably not ideal. 20 records, go nuts. Don't care. That thing is going to operate so fast that your time to optimize it is going to be wasted on the user. If I save 20 milliseconds, that is someone literally blinking their eye. Woo. That took me a week. Who got the bigger benefit? And again, that's why I say don't operate on extremely large data sets. Like, that's a problem for a data language. Let's use Python. Let's chop this up. Let's do something better. Because, I mean, frankly, as a user, are you going to want to look at 5 million objects on the screen? Hopefully not. I deal with a lot of point data. So again, computer graphics, drawing hexagons and polygons around objects. Even our complex cases are 50 points, or in one case, we have one at like 200 objects, but they were using bounding boxes. So 200 data points. Not, I mean, not terrible, not fast. And really it was the network layer that was the hindrance there. So it really wasn't my problem anyway. Let's see. So web performance is a thing that I care about like once every 6 months. React is a library, not a framework, as much as I'm not going to get into that argument. I will call it anything I darn well please, because it does pay my bills. So I know React. Y'all want to argue what if it's a framework or a library or a tool, or I import React. Yay. Yes, question.
I've heard a bunch about Svelte. Haven't had a chance to play around with it yet, but I know like people are like all about it. What do you like about that over React?
Can't answer that question because I've never played with it.
Okay, right on.
Anecdotal Twitter posts. This is faster than that. I've very, very, very surface level just agreed upon that you have a function that returns HTML and there's some state somewhere. How deep the APIs go, unfortunately, I cannot answer that. That is definitely something for a weekend that I should do, but I have to prepare for this more often. Vue, same boat. I know it's there. The only one I can actually have a formed opinion on, which is no longer valid, is Angular 1. I don't know what version they're up to now, but I did see Angular just happily announced that they have self-closing tags in JSX. You can like image self-closing tag, like they just got that. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I mean, we've had that for a while. Obviously, the whatever.
You gotta walk around.
Yeah.
It's motion. Lights are motion.
All right. I'm gonna go for a walk. It's somewhere over here. There it is.
There we go.
All right. Coming back. The lights keep going out. I went for a walk. I was going to said something was on the screen. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. So yeah, Angular 1 was the last time I ever looked at that. And just the way they did their data binding was super ugly to me, with data attributes on the HTML, and then it was magical and it was bidirectional. So you actually ran into a lot of conflict. And I was not a fan of that. React is awesome. It's declarative. So component we know is just a function of props and state. Great. You can predict what your component's going to look like. So I wish I had more of an answer. Unfortunately, I have been solely on the React bandwagon now for too long that like I used to run, know jQuery. That's how I actually got my first job was jQuery. Fantastic tool. Haven't touched it in years. Still probably one of the highest NPM downloads
Wow.
weekly, because it's used extremely heavy in WordPress and a lot of CMSs. I mean, jQuery is great. It was the first JavaScript library that used a CSS selector based engine. So you didn't have to go document.get element by class name. Okay, now if I have wait, now I can't use class name. I have to go back up to the parent div and then go for a node list. jQuery came along and said, hey, we got this. Go by class name and then just array bracket it and call yourself good. Mostly I was a PHP developer at that point, and I was forced to learn JavaScript because the university wanted an accordion. So a thing that clicked and expanded and dropped down. Super easy to do nowadays, not easy to do then. Now you can do it with just CSS. Like you don't need JavaScript whatsoever. You can do the whole thing in CSS, which I'm not going to pretend I know either. I could figure it out. NPM and CSStricks.com. That's a good one. Martin, I know you have more burning questions that you can help me out with.
Got some questions I can.
Yes.
They're mostly incredibly
Hey.
front-end engineer. Last I heard, probably like 2 years ago now, hooks were on an experimental branch for React. Are they still experimental?
No.
If not,
Hooks are officially out as of React 15.
see, we could be on 20 for all I know.
We are on React
18.6.
18.6. So yes, React hooks. So we did the conversion from class-based components to functional components, and in order to do that, they came up with hooks, which is just a really fancy scope issue, because a function is going to just, when you rerun it, it has no state. So how do we do state? We do it with hooks now. Actually, I can find it, but Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson, who you may know from React Training or React Router, were in Denver for our meetup several years ago when hooks were just out. And they gave us a really good tutorial, like they built hooks live. That is also on our YouTube. I will have to find it. And it was a really good one. It explained why using sentiment about moving back to class components. Really? Sorry, Martin just posted that he's seen people want to move back to class components. That's very interesting. I cannot give you an opinion on the matter as to why I would ever go back to class components. I think just like the life cycle was easier to understand in class components, but like I have one class component. Actually, I have a bunch, but it's the error boundary. React error boundaries are a class component because they have component did catch as a life cycle, and you can't replicate that with hooks, as far as last time I checked. But no, hooks have been around for just about 4 years. Class components, there are a dime a dozen tutorials on how to convert a class component to a functional component, how to deal with life cycle using use effect. Yeah, I Martin, you should find an article about that, because that seems really interesting to me. Why anyone would go back? I hate classes. Classes are nice. They're instance methods. That's why they had state. But it was like everything was. I have a function, so I have to this dot bind function, and so you have a constructor that is just calling super and then binding all of your functions that are already there, and like it was ugly, in my personal opinion, which I guess I get to have. More questions? Great, bring them on.
Yeah, considering your experience, is there something you don't like about the fundamental experience of React?
So I guess this is more of a tech in the weeds problem that I have with React is the call stack is super deep. If you ever get a runtime error in your component, you can look at the call stack and it's just 42 dispatches of this thing to that thing, and like none of it's useful because it's all internals of React. You're like, I'm not tracing the dispatch fiber method. I don't like, that's not what I'm looking for. So debugging is a little more difficult if you're trying to actually use stack traces. That's why I am using just a crap ton of consoles, just because the dispatch event, which does all of the render life cycle, there's a lot of stuff happening there, and I could go into the source code and try and follow it, but source code splunking is something I do enjoy doing, but React is very large in that respect. I wish that was cleaned up a little bit, but I really don't even know where they would start to do that. That'd be a good question for Sebastian. What's his last name? So, everything else. So like React, otherwise is I really like it because it is declarative. It's a component, it's just a function of props, what you send it, and state what it knows. I think the biggest thing is the potential of race conditions in state. You try and update multiple slices of state at the same time, or in series, like what is gonna happen. And I think that's just kind of more of a problem of understanding your state and understanding your asynchronous actions, using use effect where needed, using reducers instead of multiple slices of state, stuff like that. Martin says he hasn't seen any articles moving to classes. He's just heard people talk about it. They see hook-based code as messy and confusing. That's interesting. I would love to talk to someone about that because I'm interested. I see a simple hook like use effect on mount to fetch an API. Like that could be 5 lines of code. I mean, the equivalent in a class component might be 3 lines of code because its component did mount. So I guess it's easier to understand from the class to say this function is doing the component did mount. Well, that's named appropriately. I think where people got most caught up was component did update. and having previous props to next props and then doing deep comparisons to know whether or not you should re-render. And now that's just memo. You just call it a memo and have a nice day. Yeah. Does that hopefully answer any part of that question?
That was helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. Hot drama one is any opinion on CSS and JS?
CSS and JS. Yes. I use right now styled components. I've used JSX. Prior to that, I think both are great. I do personally like styled components and whatnot, that it is runtime, but I think the engine is definitely fast enough for anything that I've thrown at it, and I've thrown a lot of stuff at it. One of my components, just CSS style component, was I think 75 lines, and that was with props doing ternaries and stuff like that. Tailwind is a fantastic CSS tool. I'm a little against Tailwind's not static, but it amounts to static. It's almost like Bootstrap, where you have 70 classes to put on one button to get it positioned right and large enough with the correct borders, and when you hover on it, it gets the right state. I'm like, great. Now I have to remember this button has 15 classes on it. And yes, we're going to follow Brad Frost's atomic design, and everything is I want to change the size. I change one prop and now it's a bigger button. That's great, but I'm a runtime. I like the runtime. So I've done SCSS or compiled CSS before. I think the part that catches so many people up about trying to do stuff like that is the build, like minify aspect of like mangling your CSS values into something smaller for bundle size. And I could care less about bundle size. Bundle size is an important aspect if you're loading your site to iPhone 7s on 2G networks in rural areas that have very bad network connection, if any. Understand your problem. I don't have a problem with bundle size, so I don't mind compiling components at runtime with certain CSS attributes. Styled components, take a step back. I use Material UI as my component library, and internally it uses styled components and emotion. So that's why I use it, because it's what they kind of leaned off and said you should do it this way. I concur. I also, I have a whole custom theme provider and whatnot, because my designers like to be so unique compared to default material, which is great. You don't want to look like another Google site. Got to have something specific. So yeah, it is a interesting hot button issue between diehards on either side. Tailwind, it has bridged that gap for a lot of folks, but then I'm also seeing either people saying vanilla CSS, or there's what was the other one? I'm not going to remember. I'm not going to remember it. It's even closer to vanilla CSS, but it's another build time, and I cannot remember the name of it. So I'll just ignore it. Um, such is life. I used to use JSX, which was what Material version 4 used to use. And that was it. You actually made all of your styles as an object and it generated a hook. And you said use styles and it gave you a classes object and it was just a key. So classes dot header, and that you would put in your class name and it was all done from there. I liked that. It was a little harder to compose objects, but you know, it worked.
How's that troubleshooting versus like vanilla JavaScript? Or is it more or less once it compiles in the browser, it's the same thing, I guess, huh?
Once it's in my browser, inspect element gives me everything I ever need. All of the so in styled components, you can either, they're one of the options, you can name the class name that it will eventually use. So you can still have a semantic CSS class name for what you want, or you can just let it fall back to what it normally uses. And that's what I usually do. Because I do let it build it. So it's done at build time for most things. Not all, because if you start using props in your styled component, then it can't compile that. It's an evaluation. I have never had an issue. Because I guess my development flow is I get an element on the page, I will use DevTools to style it the way I want, and then it's copied back into the code, refresh to make sure it still looks the way I want it to, and then I move on. That jump back and forth, even with hot page reloading, it's fast enough, but DevTools, use them. Any more questions? Daniel, question? Oh, come on. So I guess the other random things I can randomly talk about is like general job market. We know it's not great, but that being said, it's never bad and never great at the same time. As much as I would love to say it's a bull market and everyone can have a job, but we then turn around and see Twitter lays off 10,000 people and Amazon is laying off another couple thousand people, and it's not great. No one wants to be part of that. I never wish that upon anyone, even my enemies. That sucks. You don't want to lose your job. The Denver job market, I actually honestly don't know that well. My company is remote. Technically, they're out of Santa Monica, but no one actually lives there. Fair amount of people live in either Texas or Seattle. So I don't pay a whole ton of attention to Denver. But I also will acknowledge that the junior level role is there's a lot of resumes that come in. And so the biggest question does come out, what do I do? Like, how do I get my name on that list for someone to look at? And I can only give you what I've done for job hunting, as well as when I'm interviewing. Your resume, standard rules apply. Don't make it more than 2 pages. I'm not going to read it. I honestly probably don't care about your previous employment history beyond name and time. LinkedIn is the if I want to find out what your experience is at a company, I'll go to LinkedIn. Your resume needs to be basically down and to the point. Give me links to find out more. Otherwise, I will use Google. So hopefully you have a more of a unique name than John Adams. Martin is posting some great resources, Wall Street Journal and Business Insider for people looking. Those laid off have been doing fairly well. That's good. So the entry-level roles, I'm seeing two types of roles. They are in fact entry, but they are selling it in the job description as much more medium, higher range. They're purposely adding technologies in there to try to weed people out. They're like, oh, I don't know this, so I'm not going to even apply. I am personally against that. I mean, yes, I do use WebGL, but I don't put WebGL on my job posting because that's something I can teach you. I understand why for an entry-level role, putting stuff on there is going to reduce the amount of input you're going to get. For a more entry-level role, you get the floodgates. You get a lot. I go through GitHub. I will look at your public profile, which only does so much. Obviously, like if you look at my public profile, it doesn't say much. I work for a private company and I can't show you that code, but I would say, like, having projects of any size, I actually prefer micro projects that focus on one or two technologies over I'm going to rewrite a library system and use 100 different tools. Show me, I just learned Redux, and I think Redux is awesome. Give me a to-do app. Give me the contrived to-do app that I've seen 1,000 times before. I know how the to-do app works. Let me see how you did your Redux. That's what I'm going to be looking at. If I'm looking, I need someone that knows Redux. I'm going to go look at their profile and look at Redux. So personal projects are one of the things I look at the most. I do hire a lot of seniors, so unfortunately, I also look at tenure, which is also the thing I hate the most. I hate tenure because Ask and Seek does not equate to knowledge. I hired a kid straight out of CSU, learned JavaScript after applying for the job. No frameworks, no libraries, just, this looks like an interesting job. Sat down and learned JavaScript. And he was by far the most productive member of that team for years. Rewrote swaths of the library, of our library at the time, and was very, very smart. If I only graded him by how long he had been in the industry, he would have been stuck at entry level and wasted.
Question on that is, can tenure at a specific company over too long of a time, can that hurt you, or is that kind of subjective?
Yes and no. When I'm looking, the first thing when I'm looking for tenure is length of time, unfortunately. I mean, I would place a bigger black mark on a tenure of 2 months at 5 roles in 1 year than 1 role for 5 years. That being said, when you do stick at one position, you do pigeonhole yourself a little bit because that is what you're building. You know, I don't deal with web audio, and so I've never played with it. Okay, I don't have a practical use case. Could I go and build a personal project? Sure. Do I have time? No. So it does benefit a lot of folks to go in for a walk. Over here, right there. There we go. It is actually good for your career in a lot of aspects. Who say I've completed my role here. Like I can only be in maintenance mode from here on out. Like yes, there's a feature, but I can only contribute so much, and it is time to move on. It's what I did with my last job. It's also probably the easiest, by far easiest way to get a raise. Asking for a raise sucks because you're talking to someone who already knows how much they're paying you, and if you're going to ask for 20%, you got to come with a lot of evidence to prove your worth and say, if you don't give me 20% raise, I'm walking. However, I got a $30,000 raise by changing companies and just asking for what I deemed I was worth. The last company I was at 90,000, and I was trying. Actually, it was 88. I was trying to make 100. Some arbitrary amount that makes me feel good as an engineer. I'm making 6 figures. Woo! Don't care. I was at 88, and I was trying to get to 100. And I spent a year in negotiations trying to get a raise. The day I got my offer letter for a raise is the day I turned in my resignation for my current job, which now I'm at 150. So well beyond what I was even trying for. And that was literally just changing the role. Can I get more? Probably. I like the place I'm at right now. I really do. I have great coworkers, and we are solving some very interesting problems that I care about. So that's my biggest thing when it comes to like mid-level senior. I know a lot of you are all junior, and you take what you're going to take what you get, kind of thing. But as you get the experience, like you're going to find that the technology is the easy part. It's the people, it's the company, it's what am I doing? You know, a lot of people liked or hated working for Twitter, depending on your philosophic ideals, that they worked there because they loved the company, not because they loved their paycheck. Now, of course, a lot of them liked their paycheck up until a couple months ago. So I do place a lot of value on people rather than paycheck. Obviously, I have a mortgage. That is kind of a very important thing. I have kids, and you know, kind of important, but I would trade my job for a lesser role if it meant I was happier and working with people who I respected, and you know, would have no problem sitting on a Zoom call for multiple hours a day. Because you know, hate to say, but you're not getting out of meetings. There's so many ceremony meetings of stand-ups and sprint retros and planning poker, which is so stupid. Anyway. All right.
I have a couple things I might add.
Yes.
For hiring, I would say I've seen so many resumes that are completely unrelated to what I'm looking for,
Yes.
and it's almost like dead obvious don't like, on some level, I get to shooting stuff out there, but I've seen so many resumes come through that I'm just like, this is not what I'm trying to find. This
Yes,
is completely unhelpful.
crafting your resume for the role, especially ones you are actively going for, right? Yes, we do shotgun your resume out a lot, and those are like, if I get a call back from that one, great. If I don't, oh well. But the places that you're going after, format your resume. I want to see line for line of the job requirements matching projects, or even if you do a bullet point list of, I know Jest. Like, if I ask for Jest, tell me that you know it. I want to see it verbatim, like, this is the person I am asking for. Cover letters, I don't get the cover letter. Like, by the time resumes come to me, I don't get cover letters. I don't get any of that. So I literally get a resume, and on the PDF, I copy and paste your GitHub link. So cover letters are a little lost on me.
How about portfolios?
Portfolio, that's I either your own website,
Right.
but linking to code.
Right.
From my perspective, I want to see code. Like, obviously, that's what I'm hiring for. So generally, links to the project, both in Spirit as it's running and in Solid as it was written, so I can see, like, showing me a to-do app that is using Redux is great. I know how the to-do app works. I'm probably not going to view it. I'm going to just go read the code because I know what to expect. And honestly, that's the part I like the most, is when I can remove, when I'm looking at resumes and whatnot, I can remove the problem statement. What is the application doing? And figure out, what are you doing in the application? So one of the things I would say is, to do is a great one. There's a lot of different starter projects, but I actually will clone the same exact project with different technologies. Like, today I'm going to learn GraphQL, and so I'm going to make all of the to-dos asynchronous, but I'm going to use the Hasura GraphQL database. Or I'm going to learn state management with persistence. So if I refresh the screen, everything is in local storage. Okay. So as the time between dimming of the lights is indicating, we are running out of time. I will conclude this here. Lots of great questions. Please, Discord is the best way. There's a lot of folks on there that can also give you insight more than just me. I have great opinions, but not. Last question. What is my favorite movie? Situational, but probably the easiest answer is going to be The Princess Bride. A very quotable movie, fantastic actors. One of those movies you can watch it again and again and not get bored with it. So Princess Bride, fantastic movie. The original Matrix, I think it was really good. I think they should have stopped there. I think it was a great thing, but they went into, the technology is great, and we've made a lot of money, so we have to come up with more story. And like, that was, you could tell, like, they were just reaching for money, not for a story. And Star Wars, because I'm a nerd. I love Star Wars and Star Trek, and whatnot. So in fact, for the folks that see, can I do it this way? There's the sticker on my computer. My wife just made that for me, actually like 2 days ago, before I had a Thai advanced fighter on there. So it just got changed to that. So yeah, I'm a nerd. I like that stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna let you all go. Find me on Discord. I'm super happy to answer questions at any time. I will also pester others that should have been here to also ask/answer questions, because I think a diverse viewpoint is also fairly important. I am a middle-aged white guy in tech, and yeah, so what I'm to that end, I am trying to get more people to come give me talks, but thus far I'm here talking because I had nobody. I would be absolutely grateful if people came up with some talk ideas and talk to me, make it happen. Anyway, have yourself a wonderful night. Folks online, thank you for coming. And nice seeing you all here. And we'll take it easy. Kill the recording. I don't know how to kill the recording without stopping. Okay, well, bye then.